Greetings, family. I wanted to come on really quickly because we are at a crucial time in the year. It is June. We've made it to the midway point. And as I continue to do equity work, working with school districts, universities, colleges, corporate organizations, small businesses, nonprofits around equity, creating anti-racist spaces that are positive and in line with what equity, belonging, and humanity should look like for an organization serving not just their people in community, but the people that they employ, as well as how they leave a global footprint on the world. I'm currently on location. I am in the great state of Michigan, and I'm very close to Detroit. I flew into Detroit last week. I leave tomorrow on an early flight heading back to California so that I can be home in enough time to hug my babies and enjoy them tomorrow. But I wanted to come on really quickly because if you live in the state of California, and there are some other key states around this country that have had their primary elections. Tomorrow, June 7th, is ours, right? We get to say who's going to be on that ballot for November. And so before I get started into what this whole thing is all about, I want to encourage us all to use our ballots wisely. Like, don't necessarily vote for, but be thinking about what your needs are. But if you're in a good position in community, don't always think about how is this vote or this issue going to benefit me, the individual. Think of things from a community perspective. And then take it a step further. Think about it from a perspective of who is the most vulnerable, disenfranchised, and targeted in community. How can we help lift those individuals to be at a status of where we are? I don't consider I'm by far am I, a rich millionaire sitting up cushy, right? But I'm okay where my family and I are able to make the bills meet from month to month. We have a roof over our head that is sustainable, right? We have vehicles to drive, multiple. My children are in a school and district of our choosing, not out of necessity because it's the one around the corner, which tax bracket might not be so high and therefore its performance is a little bit low. And so those are the things that when people ask me, say, hey, Sonia, how do you vote the way that you vote? I vote for other people to be lifted at the very minimum to the standard of where I am, right? And so I vote for policies that are going to help those who are unhoused right now. The housing market is crazy ridiculous. Rent is up. To purchase a home is extremely hard. It is a seller's market right now. And so literally landlords and sellers can have it their way. And so we have to be cognizant of that. We also have to be very aware of the political climate as it impacts the school district all over this country. Teachers are in a precarious situation where they don't know if they should teach a certain thing, if they should mention a certain subject. And that's a scary place to be if you think that your job and your livelihood could be threatened if you're not doing the right thing. And so that leads as a wonderful segue into why I'm here in Michigan. And I want to make this short and sweet because I was selected to be a leadership speaker at the University of Michigan with the Leadership Experience Tour here in Troy, Michigan, which isn't too far from Detroit. And this weekend, I gave one of my signature talks on imagining a world where the next generation of young people won't have to heal from racialized childhood trauma. And so I started off the talk because music kind of dictates my life. I can tell you when there was a time in my life, that song was the theme song of my life. I replayed it. Right now, I don't necessarily have a song, so to speak. I guess as I am walking in my business mindedness, one of the songs that just really resonates with me right now is this song that has lyrics that says, "Scared money don't make no money." And so for me, it is like, I need to continue to invest in myself. I need to be able to show people the value in the work that I do and bring to these organizations, so that I am compensated appropriately and that I am no longer giving services away. And so when I was thinking about this talk, imagining a world where young people won't have to, there won't be this need, this aching pain of healing from racialized childhood trauma, Mary J. Blige came to mind. And it's this one particular song and this one particular line where she says, I got a question for you, but I already know the answer, right? And so I have this question. If you could think about yourself as a child, like really, really go back in time and think about that first time in your childhood where you experienced trauma. And maybe it wasn't your trauma, maybe it was that you witnessed a trauma. Put that memory in your mind. And then as you put that memory in your mind, I want you to ask yourself, did an adult that you trusted cause you to believe that children should be seen and not heard? And I'll pause for you to think about that. Did you believe or buy into this notion that children should be seen and not heard? Well, again, I got a question for you, and I might not already know the answer. You probably know the answer too. A lot of us, consciously and unconsciously, have bought into that notion. And it's not that we want to, I can say for myself, wholeheartedly, I have never had the intention of silencing a child so that their pain or their lived experience wouldn't be validated. But I do know that I have silenced my children in a sense of, maybe I don't have time right now to listen to what you have to say. And so I'm very intentional right now in this moment of my motherhood journey, where I'm being intentional about listening and being better with my presence, my time, because I don't want them to grow up and have to heal from childhood trauma. And so let me take this question a little further. I got a question for you, and I might already know the answer, but if you are like me, and I'm gonna raise my hand first, when you became an adult, and I kind of already answered this, have you silenced a child and or caused them trauma? I will tell you, as a young parent, I had my first child at age 24, and there wasn't a rule book. I didn't have all of the things that I have at my disposal right now. There were things that I just didn't know and understand. And so I leaned on how my parents raised me to be that blueprint for how I would raise my children. And now that I have 6 beautiful boys, there's some things that I did with my first 3 that I refuse to do with my last 3. As a matter of fact, my older 3 tell my husband and I quite often, you all have gotten soft over the years. I'm coming over to whoop your kids, because if I would have done that, you would have whooped me. And we don't. I will honestly say that we don't, dispense the whoopings the way that we used to when we were younger parents. And so it has been a maturation. It has been a journey of maturing as a parent. And so when I say, I'm asking these tough questions, and this is very, very indicative of my training style when I'm with any organization, I'm asking the questions for us to think about, how can we make life better for those that we seemingly have power and control over? I don't necessarily want to have control over anyone. I want people to be able to control their own emotions and behaviors and beliefs, but we have to kind of help mold these things. And so, as I've asked you, like, when that trauma happened, did you have this sense of, shh, don't say that. Shh, if you say that again, somebody could be in big trouble. Shh, right? Because kids get that message, and we don't even have to say the shh. That's the sad part about it. They inherently pick up signs and wonders from the adults that are around them. They believe, especially if they don't feel that they can be safe with telling their lived experiences and their truth, they hold it. And then one day it comes out, and then we have to realize, oh my God, I let that happen on my watch. And that's what I mean about, did I traumatize my children? I had to answer that question and sit with that answer. And unfortunately, the answer is yes. And so I just want to really impart, as we imagine a world where the next generation of young people don't have to heal from childhood trauma, to really be intentional about making sure that children are seen and heard. Like, for real, what would that look like? Today, I want to share with you, as we imagine this future, I want to share with you a little story about 7-year-old Sonia. 7-year-old Sonia had watched her mother and father try to figure out their position in the world. And if we are answering this question with every decision, do we go along to get along? Or do we shake things up a little bit because we got a question? We challenging a system, or we're setting boundaries. I can say for my mother, she was probably a little bit more outspoken. I used to, from my vantage point, I believed that my mother's outspokenness was associated with, at the time, because I'm a 70s baby, with the Black Panther Party. Most people who know me and my training, I'm an Oakland chick. And so the Black Panthers were very prominent in our communities. And so I equated my mother's outspokenness to the Black Panthers. Now, she will tell you to this day, if she was sitting right here next to me, she would say, I was never a part of the Black Panther Party. She would say that she also went to a few meetings. She was also very active on her job when it came to workplace discrimination. She often asked herself and her colleagues, why is such and such getting a raise or a promotion and we aren't? Those are questions that I listened to as a child. So 7-year-old Sonia watched her mother be very disgruntled with her employment situation. I also watched my father, who was a Vietnam veteran, be one of the first of 5 men, Black men, who were hired to integrate the Richmond Police Department in California, which is a suburb of the Bay Area. And I never saw him come home in his police uniform. I never saw him drive his police vehicle. But I was supposed to believe that he was a cop. And part of me was like, my daddy ain't no cop, because I see that cops in my neighborhood do people who look like us with melanin in their skin. They do us dirty. At 7, I recognized these things. So 7-year-old Sonia went to school one day, and we had just finished up a lesson on the Statue of Liberty. And according to my teacher, this teacher taught us that liberty meant we have the freedom to choose where we live and who we associate with. Liberty is a matter of democracy, and it's for everyone. And so I began to take that lesson, and then every day we're getting up at the beginning of every class, the flag is flying in the classroom, and the loudspeaker comes on, and the 6th grader gets on the intercom system. We all stand up in unison, we put our hands on our heart, and we say the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States of America. But on this particular day, I said, I'm not saying this pledge no more, because liberty and justice does not apply to the Black community. I want that to sit in with some folks, because it's important. As I share the story of 7-year-old Sonia, I do not believe that I'm an anomaly, that really and truly that there's other 7-year-olds from the beginning of time till now who are making some observations, rightfully so. And so This was done in 1978, way before Colin Kaepernick took a knee. You know that Colin that took a knee and got blackballed out of the NFL? Yeah, that Colin. No, what he was doing was standing up against police brutality and state sanctioned violence. And in a very ironic and similar fashion, I really and truly think that that's what I was standing up against when I said to myself, I'm not saying the Pledge of Allegiance anymore. And so, again, I have to question whether or not children are seen and heard, or are they told, shh, don't do that. Shh, don't say that. And so I didn't ever want to live in this world where I didn't feel like I could challenge something that didn't feel right, sit right in my spirit. And I believe if not me, then who? So if you believe it or not, I want you to consider and evaluate the fact that children are watching all of the inconsistencies, all of the inequities in the world, and they've come to very righteous conclusions that there possibly isn't liberty and justice for all. And that could potentially mean that there isn't fairness and equity. And so on that day, I unapologetically, authentically stood in my decision not to stand. It has taken me many years to finally complete. So I did this thing earlier this year. I wrote this book, and I should have brought it over here to show you the book, called Monsters and Aliens. And I took that story of 7-year-old Sonia as the crux, as the foundation for the book Monsters and Aliens, because it was my interpretation of good versus evil, one, right? I always felt like the oddball out because I was always saying, I got a question. Right? Always the one challenging the system, always the one bullying the bullies. But in writing this book, Monsters and Aliens, what I've come to realize is that there are monsters in the world who intentionally use their power and position to harm people, harm others. And it is us aliens, and I'm okay with being an alien. I'm very proud of being a shapeshifter who celebrate the differences that make us all unique. It has been my firsthand experience, from the streets of Oakland to the classroom, to the boardroom, to city, county, and state municipalities, and watching how policies are not equitable. That's been my lived experience. And so not only have I written this book, I made this stance when I was 7 years old. And in between those two things, I was a high school history teacher for about 20 years. And I said to myself every year that I would come back into the classroom, this system is not designed for certain students to succeed. As a mommy, another hat in between those two things, as a mommy, I would have to show up and demand that my babies get the education that they deserve. And I had to take off my mommy hat sometime and put on my educator's hat and be like, I know what you're supposed to be doing in the classroom. And then as a social justice advocate and activist in community, the complaints that I would see come in constantly surrounded education, surrounded workplace racism, surrounded medical genocide and racism, and housing discrimination, so many things, but education being the most important one. And so I really wanted to tie into this thing of imagining a world where young people no longer have to heal from racialized trauma, because I felt like the Pledge of Allegiance was very racially motivated because it set certain communities up for failure. To believe this thing, hand on your heart, looking at the flag, uttering these words, and it doesn't apply to you, in my opinion, is kind of devastating, and it's a lie. And so as I moved in these spaces, from classroom to boardroom to city municipalities and political structures, I began to ask myself, what are we doing to leverage equity? And so I am the founder and CEO, the very proud founder and CEO of Ascribe Educational Consulting, where we leverage everything equity. And what that looks like is we help organizations, I don't care how small or large, what the industry is, we help organizations audit, align, and put action to their words, the 3 A's. See, it's important that as we have these lofty vision and mission statements that oftentimes say, oh, I want to do this for all of my customers. I want to do this for all students. We forget that there are groups who oftentimes are marginalized, who oftentimes are vulnerable and left to figure out how to succeed and thrive on their own. And so it has been my collective experience as a mother, as an educator, community agitator, organizer, entrepreneur, and now author, that today in 2022, that I can stand unflinchingly in any organization, regardless of all of those other things and whatever good work that they do in community, and address their needs from a very systemic, institutional, and structural perspective when it comes to breaking down racism. We have all been forced to one degree or another to perpetuate the continued existence of racism and power in this country. So as an anti-racism impact solutionist, I often help organizations strategize and figure out how do we do things better? Because this is what I know for sure. I don't care if it's students or if it's employees or if it's community. People want to feel valued. And how do we do that? We help them feel like they belong as a part of your system, your organization. Belonging further perpetuates humanity, because then we can step out of our own shoes and we can step into someone else's shoes, and we can see that someone else needs our assistance and our voice. And so that's the thing, is we all have these lived experiences. This is not about oppression Olympics, but what it is about is realizing that we are a resource-rich country. There's enough for all of us to go around. And so as an anti-racism solutionist, it is in this capacity that I help organizations identify and match their mission and vision with their beliefs and behaviors. You know, sometimes when you go into a business office or setting of some sort, and you know who that one person is who's the gatekeeper. In education, when I was a teacher, I used to say it's the janitor and the secretary. They set the stage and the energy for everything. I tell my kids still to this day when they go to school, get to know the janitor and the secretary. They hold the keys to the climate and culture. And so if the spectrum, think about it this way, if the spectrum from white to black, right, were flipped on its head and black is at the bottom, let's just agree, even if you disagree, that when we're talking about equity, that black is at the bottom. If you lift from the bottom, the top will automatically lift too. So this isn't a matter of taking anything away from anyone. Imagining a future where children don't have the need to further heal from racialized trauma means that we do just that. We address the needs. No longer selfishly saying, oh, we good over here and I don't have to worry about those over there. That's what this work is all about. As I debate, I just finished up a session with one of my clients. We're nearing the end of the school year. And this client in particular is an entire school district that myself and others have been leading them through curating a safe, brave space for conversations around race, racism, and white supremacy. We did a lot of talking and training around what it means to live in a country where whiteness is the norm, where it is perpetuated and everything else is put to the side. And so I go back and I think about my parents every time I'm in a training session, and I say, I want my children not to have to go along to get along. So believe it or not, these kids are watching us. And as I've published the first book in a series that right now looks like it will be a series of 5 books, I want people to be thinking about what really and truly are the ways that we can leverage equity in a way that we fill in the gaps. We've all been uniquely made, and our differences need to be seen. Therefore, when you hear statements like, I don't see color, know that that is a microaggression, and you really have to see color. I need you to see the beautiful textures of my brown skin. And so I'll leave you with this. For more information about the services that we offer, and they have a variety of, but the main thing is that we help organizations leverage equity. 2, we help leaders who are not ready to lead the charge in this equity work get ready. So we have an equity mind shift platform, coaching, so to speak. Think about it as like EMS, emergency medical services, equity mindset shifting, right? Because I will promise you this, those who are the most marginalized within your organization can recognize BS coming and going. And even if you organize professional development like, but not limited to, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's still not enough. And I say it's still not enough because oftentimes DEI professionals are very transactional. They provide a certificate, they help you cross a T, dot a I, right? Check a box. I've come to the realization that my integrity is more important than giving you a certificate. And so I work with organizations for a year at the minimum to 5 years or however long after that to really make sure that the shifts are long lasting and sustainable. And so again, I said we do equity mindset shifting for leaders and corporate execs. We lead organizations, I said small or large, regardless of industry. And then we are a speaking, engaging services. And so oftentimes I'm asked to come in and give a keynote or lead a conference session. You can find more information about these services and how to purchase the book at ascribesuccess.com. That's ASCRIBE, success.com. You can also find us at Ascribe Success on Facebook and Instagram. We are at Ascribe Education or Ascribe Ed on Twitter. We look forward to connecting with you soon. Thank you so much.